Kiss the world goodbye. my power, my truth. You make sure I will never lose. I am becomes the killer. He who steals becomes the thief. No absolution from your savior. You'll find no solace in belief. Evil does not die, it waits to be reborn.
That trailer really reminded me of how batshit crazy the Manitou is. And I can't wait to watch it again.
That's a great trailer. That's a great piece, Bill.
And what did you say?
We're getting the trailer.
Oh. Are we working good?
Yeah, it was a little delayed on my end, just a little tiny bit.
Yeah, it's delayed. Now the trailer's ending.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Yeah, so I see the Manitou title now. Now it's off.
Yeah.
Now it says welcome back. That's great. I was saying it's a great trailer.
Strange. I don't know why that delay happened. So yeah.
I played enough doom metal bands. I'm used to the delay, Bill. How can you top a movie? How can you top a movie where a grizzly gets shot with a bazooka? We're going to try. I think the Manitou does. I think the Manitou goes for it. As you can see from that trailer, that starfield that they walk out into gets me excited every time. I'm like,
oh yeah. I mean, like, you know, I hate the first film I was taken to at a movie theater was 2001. I was 3.
Oh wow.
And my obviously nothing. I mean, I was probably, you know, I was like Care delay at the end by the time I just like, but the ending of the Manitou goes over the. I mean, it just goes there. It says, okay, whatever you've seen for the last 90 minutes, now we're gonna go, beyond the infinite.
Yeah,
you know, in our own batshit way. Yeah, totally.
It's like going to the Spencer's in the 70s. It's like little blacklight posters and beaded curtains.
Yeah,
that's what I love.
Yeah.
Bill, I found something, by the way, about GRIZZLY.
It was on the first board in Rovo.
It is. I brought out Erica's book, The Sweetest Taboo, which is about child kills in cinema. And there's actually a quick glance at GRIZZLY, saved by a throwaway line. And she wrote, in William Byrd was GRIZZLY, a young boy severely mauled, but the park ranger lets everyone know later that the boy will be just fine.
Right.
And barely audible dialogue. So in case you're wondering if he's okay, he was saved by a throwaway line.
That's good to know. Well, then Bill in the novelization, then he perishes, right? According to the book takes it the other way, right? He doesn't survive in the book.
Oh yeah, he dies in the book. They kept it
Right.
real in the novel.
Right. Yeah, yeah. They want to be authentic. Yeah. Because when your arm comes off and you're 7, that's basically the end of it, pretty much. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, that was a pretty scary scene, I have to admit. Even though it's a little silly too, but the peril that you feel for him is real, especially when he sets up that great fake out moment where he runs out to get the bunny.
Right.
Not only is there a cute kid, there's a cute bunny in the scene. Okay,
Yeah. 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 And you can't have a mom. I
and
mean,
you're
a
like,
mom
oh,
watching their child be mauled is probably one of the worst things. Although I have to say the tent the
yeah,
tent murder
Oh yeah.
is pretty gnarly. I mean, it's sort of, again, it's an abstraction because you don't really see the woman in the bear's mouth, but she apparently is being like swung from side to side somehow, either in its jaws or in its claws. Something's happening. It's like she's being held aloft. Something about that freaks me out. Yeah.
yeah. All she wanted to do was get pretty.
Yeah.
She was
That's
sitting
it.
in her tent camping, but she wanted to
You don't
glamp instead of
Yeah, you
camp.
don't tent overnight. See, that's the message of the movie. Just don't no overnight camping. It's a bad
I totally
mistake.
forgot to bring this up to you guys about this. I was looking back through my review of it, and years ago, I was telling my dad asked me what I was watching lately, and I said, "Oh, I just rewatched Grizzly." And when I was telling him about it, he goes, "Let me tell you a story about Grizzly." My parents went to like Salamanca Casino from Pittsburgh, which is like 3-hour drive, and for some reason, Grizzly was the VHS that was playing on the bus, and and my
Oh
I
wow.
and my mom was like, "I couldn't wait for that fucking movie to end." She's like, I just wanted it to end, and it was so horrible. And when she left the room, my dad's like, it was great. Like they blew it up with a rocket. Like my dad was so happy about it. He was like, it was so good. So yeah, we were very similar to liking the movies we liked. Also,
Right.
we didn't discuss it, but the Grizzly sequel probably should never be watched either.
Yeah. I stayed
It's
away.
Yeah, I wanted to love it, even though it's wild that like Laura Dern, George Clooney, and Charlie Sheen are all in it.
Right.
Like they got him young, and yeah, it was called Grizzly 2: The Concert, which that's a great name for it. It's like what? uh, sure,
Far out, man.
yeah, far out. It's not good though.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up too is if you ever listen to Tarantino's podcast when he did the episodes where he interviewed Rick Dalton talked about being in Grizzly. So in the world of Tarantino, Andrew Prine is not in Grizzly. It's Rick Dalton,
Rick Dalton, right,
playing that role, which that makes sense. Like he was in a lot of William Gardner movies, according to the interview he did
How
with Rick
funny.
Dalton. Yeah, so I like that there's this like he also was in a bunch of movies for Canon too. He did 3 Fireman movies for Canon
Right.
and owned the rights to them. So
So that's
he fits into that world.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
The one thing that really jumped out at me this time watching it, I hadn't actually seen it in a long time, but the music is really kind of, I think the music kind of gives it a cheap experience. I don't know. The soundtrack it sounds like it's attempting to be something like grand and glorious, but instead it ends up being like very TV thriller, almost library music.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't seem to mind it when I was a kid. I think I bought into the opening helicopter music
Yeah.
of it feeling
Oh, it's
bigger.
beautiful.
I think I just I think I choose to remember just the opening cue and the end cue, because I guess the end cue has that sort of like mournful harmonica, as
Yes.
Christopher George
Nobody
Connelly,
won.
the magnitude of rocket launching a bear and all his lost friends, and but yeah, I think his name is what's his name, Robert O. Raglan. I think he was a composer, and I think he also did Q. He did Q the Winged Serpent for Larry Cohen.
Oh wow.
I think and he also
That I like.
I'm pretty sure he also did Abby, which makes sense because
Yeah.
most of the people he worked with repeatedly. Girdler.
I I would love to see a great looking version of Abby, but you know what? I'm happy with my orange colored one that I have. My copy is so beat up. I'm like, that's fine. This is probably how I should experience Abby.
Well, it's interesting. There's sort of a I've talked to a few people, definitely younger than us, about this, and we can certainly relate to it. Like the format and I don't want to say the resolution, but the quality of the print that you first of your first viewing of whatever it is that you care about definitely factors into your memory of it and also how you re-experience it. And this is a dumb movie to compare, but this young woman was telling me that, like, one of her movies when she was a kid, and it shows how young she was, it was Speed. It was a Jan de Bont, Keanu Reeves Speed. So
Wow.
she was saying that when she chooses to watch Speed, rather than watch the 4K, cleaned up Speed, she'd rather pop in the VHS, 4:3, because that speaks to the memory and the impact and the feeling, and that if you show it in its proper aspect ratio, all cleaned up, it isn't the same. It isn't the same fondness for the thing. And
I feel that same way.
I think
The movie
I was curious what
Werewolf
you guys
versus
thought about that. Yeah.
Werewolf versus Vampire Woman,
Mhm.
which fell into the public domain at some point. It was on every Mill Creek thing, and it was a really beat up looking version of the movie. It was reissued as Werewolf Shadow, its original title. It was all fixed
Mhm.
up and everything. But I was bummed out when I watched it. I was like, oh, this isn't what I remember. They totally had the real soundtrack as opposed to the library cues that are in
Right.
Werewolf versus Vampire Woman. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if the first time that's your memory, that's where your mark is there in however you experienced it the first time. And that's
Yeah,
what
like
we're
the artifacts that other people you would consider, and certainly the filmmakers would prefer that you see it in the right aspect ratio and the right color timing, and not a beat up, scratched print. But it's
yeah.
weird how those things marry, you know, and that if you see something, you see it differently. Obviously, the obvious example of people going bananas over that is when someone like Lucas goes to the extreme of, completely
Oh,
changing and removing and all that kind of stuff. Where that's the whole you've raped my childhood kind of stuff. So that outcry
yeah.
comes out. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's an interesting thing. Like, we were talking, I think, earlier about Night of the Living Dead, and my first experience with that is easily a 16 millimeter print on a small black and white TV with bad reception. And even that bad reception, like, I watched the Criterion, possibly the best version you can get, a couple of years ago, and I sort of miss the noisy version. It's just it just it feels more right.
It's
So
It's the
not as
word.
good of a movie, but like Full Cheese City of the Living Dead, I saw on a battered VHS the first time I saw it, and it worked better for me as that than the 4K I had because it covered up some of the cheapness of the effects, and it
right,
covered up the fog actually mixed into the fog of
right.
the second or third gen VHS, and I was like, oh, this movie feels like this like artifact versus now it's like so clean I can see some of the strings and some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like a facelift. Yeah, it's like you remove. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think you're right. And also perhaps even there's a certain danger
Mhm.
that is there in the dirtiness in the artifacts. That if when you take that away, it's like you've sanitized it somehow. You shined it up too much. It's not as savage anymore. It's not as dangerous
Yeah. Well, it's
anymore.
like when I first saw it, I know it's not the best movie, but like Manos, the Hands of Fate, like the thing that I liked about it that was so scary about it to me, if anything is scary, is like that it feels like it's taking place in this world of darkness where you can't see anything else
Excuse me. Yes. Yeah.
around this world. And on the reissued Blu-ray, but you can see the lights of the city. And I'm like, oh, there's actually people around this. And it kind of took away some of the power of like, what is this strange universe that they've built for Torgo and these characters? So it kind of like I like it. It's neat to see it cleaned up. Yeah, sometimes, like you said, I like it a little more dangerous and a little scuzzy. Like I don't mind when a print's beat up sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think it's also if you're born back when we were watching stuff on TV and they were the TV you're used to commercials being in stuff and you're used to however you could see things. You're a little more forgiving than today. Kids are like, well, is it the right what's the best possible quality one that I can
Right,
see.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right.
Sometimes it helps though. Like there was on TV, I first saw Lamora, which was under the title Lady Dracula on TV. It was one of those WOR screenings, really
Hmm.
late, like in the middle of the night. And I'm watching it, and there's this, Richard Blackburn sets up that amazing chase sequence through the old burned out barn, and she's being chased in the dark by all these vampire people. But you really couldn't see what was happening on TV, and it frustrated me. And then
Hmm.
when I saw the fixed up DVD version, I was like, wow, this is a beautifully orchestrated scene. So
Yeah,
that
I
it
mean,
helps sometimes.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think it just, I guess it depends on the movie. I mean, as a filmmaker, like I really appreciated actually the move. Now there's a whole sort of fandom around watching films projected in the original 35 millimeter. But for me, there was always the um, problem of,
Yeah,
of the prince being not properly masked, and basically suddenly a green line, scratch going through the whole thing, and with repeat viewings, the prints get more damaged, and then the real changes start to get messed up, and it's the whole thing. And so when finally digital projection sort of reached its technical peak, I was so happy that at least I didn't have to worry about that anymore. And it's so interesting how sort of the pendulum swings the other way. But now that we're so used to an absolutely pristine image, that there's actually a need to see something that isn't quite as perfect if you can, something that's actually where the image is going to fluctuate in the gate, like that's all the things that you struggle to remove, as a filmmaker, are now things that are like somehow welcome or wanted. Um,
I like having a choice. Like some distributors were including a grindhouse style print on the Blu-ray releases where you could watch it with all the scratches and everything
right.
before the restoration. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. As long as it's not, I mean, so what is interesting is I see people, particularly students, using uh, different programs and apps to incorporate artifacts into clean
I
stuff.
do it
Like,
for the stuff I make for the show.
yeah, and it's so funny because again, this was something that I was like, wet gate printing and all these things where you're just trying to remove dust and every conceivable thing that you can do to get it to be as you know good looking as possible, and no distractions. And now there are entire programs where you can just like pour, you can just spread this stuff all over a completely, a pristine image. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting. But I get that with certain grindhouse movies, because that was part of the experience. I mean, watching those movies uh, on 42nd Street when I was a kid, when I would muster the courage to go in those places and watch films like that. They were always, you know, brand new. They were messed up, So I didn't understand what they were supposed to look like. They were already like all that stuff was baked in, into the look already. This bad projection and scratches and everything else. Um, yeah, it's very interesting.
Bill Becca said in the comments, I forgot to tell you earlier today when we were in Target, I don't know what music they were playing, but it literally sounded like an Italian film score. It was like I've never been in public and had music drop out like this, where it was literally like a weird, like goblin esque score, and people were just walking around going, "What is this music?" And I loved every. It was like my own personal horror movie for a little bit. It was totally wonderful. So I forgot to tell you
You're
that was.
lucky.
Oh
Something terrible and beautifully violent was happening in another part of the store, but it
yeah,
wasn't to you, so you're lucky.
exactly. But it was like just literally like the beat dropped out, and it was just like like noises like that, and I was like, wow. Like this is like being in Monroeville Mall and Goblin playing. It was really like an amazing experience, and it went on for a good 2.5 minutes. Like I'm used to the most innocuous music playing when you're shopping, and this was not it. This was like very abrasive.
Wow.
So it was a cool experience. I should have filmed it actually, but it was kind of like an analog experience. Like I'm just going to take this in for me. And tell everybody about it later.
Very cool.
Yeah, these things rarely happen. But hey, at least we did have two grizzlies attack. Like I said before, the one of the malls that nobody goes to. Two black bears got into Sears, and like within a week. I think the first one told the other one like, "Hey, the humans are letting us into the mall."
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no one else is in this mall. It opened and turned into a dead mall almost immediately, Pittsburgh Mills, and then
Yeah.
for a long time it was like, "Here's the
My
blackberries."
sister worked there when that happened.
Oh, did she? Oh, wow.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Imagine like that you go out to your car to leave for the night and you're under threat of attack from a grizzly.
Well,
The
hopefully,
characters in this movie didn't see it coming either,
yeah.
especially those two campers at the beginning. That was
Oh,
really kind of brutal.
It is
I
yeah.
brutal. It is brutal.
That's the most disturbing, other than the little kid too is disturbing, but the two girls at the beginning I think is the scariest kill in the movie.
Especially now that we know that the kid was okay, that we have confirmation.
Yes.
The,
Yes.
the
I feel
kid
much
got
better about that.
Somehow
yeah.
he's not going to
He's
walk right for the rest of his life, but
yeah.
he's going to live.
Well, it's like the geek out, but like when they made the GI Joe cartoon movie, they made it after the Transformers one, and they killed Optimus Prime in that movie, and parents were very upset. So they planned to do the same thing with Duke, and Duke gets stabbed in the heart with like a spear and all this stuff, and then in the movie they ADR in a line near the end, like, "Hey guys, guess what? Duke's okay," and it's someone off camera that says it, and everybody goes, "Yay!" and it doesn't match the footage at all. Kids are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it looked like he died, like
Aw.
really violently." Yeah,
Right.
everything's fine.
I also remember the woman in the waterfall being naked, but she's not.
No.
She's
Yeah.
wearing a bikini under.
Yeah.
It's such a guy moment to put in a movie. Like that's the foreign investor moment, Bill, here, where it's like, could we see a beautiful blonde girl get partially naked under a waterfall? We'll give you $10,000 for the budget. And that's probably how that scene happened. But I'd like to think it's not as good as my favorite one. The Roger Corman one is the best in Galaxy of Terror, where it's
Yes.
like, we want to see this worm have sex with a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty shameless.
Yeah, and he told her, he's like, the foreign investors want to see this scene. Do
Right.
they? I would like to meet these lunatic oil sheiks or Japanese salarymen that are like, we have money and we'll spend it in Hollywood on perversion.
All right, so our second feature of the evening, the Manitou.
Yeah. Wow. I did not see this when it came out. I did not see this until recently. And I cannot believe that you saw this in a theater, and I can't imagine what that was like. Like, just
It was just, there was a time, I mean, I think when I finally realized I could get out of the house and go see movies and no one, when my parents weren't controlling that at all, and that I could get into, I mean, even though Manitou is PG, it was still the time when you were sneaking into R-rated movies, or I would go with a friend with a slightly deeper timbre in his voice, two tick, like try to get into stuff I couldn't. But I was also so open to seeing anything. Like it was almost like as long as it was, and it didn't even necessarily have to be horror, horror, sci-fi, or fantasy. I was seeing like, who is killing the great chefs of Europe, and somebody killed her husband, and like I just didn't care. I would
who's killing her now?
Yeah,
Oh, I love
exactly.
that one.
I'll see whatever. And so the Manitou just looked weird.
Yeah.
And the poster art was sort of abstract. It wasn't as defined what this thing could be. Even though I don't know how they would define it. I mean, you can't really present here's a Native American medicine man who's going to be reborn in a tumor of a woman. Like what? But it just promised to be weird, and then it delivers, in spades, this weirdness, this progressive weirdness. What's so interesting is that, like, it's different from GRIZZLY. Like, William Girdler, like, is like in this movie is concentrating, at least at the beginning, on like character, like he's focusing on character, and scenes where people are just conversing and things like that. And it starts to, as a young person, I said, wow, this is like an adult movie. Like this is not,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't open with somebody getting ripped apart by a bear. This is like talking about medical stuff, and there seems to be something going on. And where it finally goes, is not to be believed. You just don't know. You can't possibly expect it to go where it's going to go. And I think, like I said, by the time the movie was over, I was just kind of like, my jaw was hanging open. It's like, what the fuck did I just watch? Which
That's
is
what I
great.
like so much about it's. It also feels very late '70s, where there's like this last gasp of people pre-satanic panic, of people being into like the occult, and also like there was like a big Native American art influence. Like everybody had those God's eyes in their room, or
That's
like,
right.
do you know, make this like so? It really feels like very 1978.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. I'm glad you brought that up because there is sort of almost like a subgenre of Native American influence or thematic horror. Like there's another movie of the period called Shadow of the Hawk,
Oh yeah, yeah,
with Jan Michael Vincent, which I always remember. And then you even feel it
Right.
in stuff
Yeah.
like Nightwing,
Nightwing is my other example. I was going to say,
um, and even later in Wolfen, Michael
yeah.
Wadley's movie with Albert Finney. So there's this like thing where Native American mysticism and black magic and all that is like starting to find its way. And you're right, it was like in the air in the 70s anyway,
The car.
culturally into horror. And it's definitely, here it's like the prime focus. I mean, forget the devil. It's this, this witch doc, this medicine man.
And it's cool
Um,
because it's like something that's so close to us because it's in our country, yet it feels foreign. This like this other religion and these spirits that exist back before BC, and it's like I
yes.
find that really fascinating in this.
Yeah, this ancient, but it's weird. It's tied. It's different from the, again, possession films and devil films of the period. Um,
Hmm.
Somehow the devil is just, even if you're not religious, is just it's more of an abstraction of evil and an ultimate evil as opposed to this like defined cultural, specific, physical thing. And even the opening credits you'll see of the Manitou is just it's dominated by Native American masks and art and all that is just part of the part of the whole setup is that. Into that though, Bill, as you were saying, are these sort of like where's Waldo, like what's wrong with this picture kind of thing, like Tony Curtis, right? Where Tony Curtis is like the last person that you
Yeah.
expect to be in this. I mean, he's weird. Tony Curtis is a weirdo, so in that way it makes sense. But it's certainly like, huh? What is Tony Curtis? Like, I believe
Yeah,
Burgess.
but there's
Yeah.
something very like heavy about him. He's like a big star.
Yes. No. That's what I mean. I mean, well, there is something substantive, but at that point, I think in his career, he's almost. I don't want to say he's clowning, but he's not the Tony Curtis of the
Yeah.
of he's not the Tony Curtis of Spartacus or Houdini or any of the late '60s kind of stuff. He's a different Tony Curtis. He's kind of he's and so I don't know. He's nothing. I mean, if he's nothing if not enjoyable to watch. I mean,
Hmm.
you just love watching the
Sure.
guy. You know,
Yeah, it's not a rip on him or
no, not
anything.
at all. No,
It's just,
and he commits to it. I mean, he
I
commits to
I
it.
really truly appreciate who he is in American cinema. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. It's a
It's
fascinating
funny
guy.
that this is a Native American themed
Um,
film, and they couldn't find an actual Native American actor to put in the lead role. They gave it to
Michael
Michael
Ansara
Ansara.
is your ethnically ambiguous. He can be Native American.
Yes.
He's like Hollywood's go-to Native American of the late '70s, but not he's not Native American
right, right, right.
to the point that
He
people
was of
thought he was.
Syrian heritage.
But
He
what do you
was
think
married to
about the?
Barbara Eden.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that there is a very specific, what became body horror that I feel is like this is an early sort of dive into that in a very extreme way. I mean, like as you'll see when you watch the movie, this all starts with what's and I don't know. It's kind of weird because Susan Strasberg, who's the lead, uh, kind of she has a tumor and it's not a small tumor. I mean, but from the very beginning, she's kind of like, yeah, this happened like 2 days ago. I don't know. It seems fine, and it's like the size of a base. It's the size of a baseball that
Yeah,
has appeared in just 2 days. So automatically, this thing that the doctors examine and they're alarmed by it, is kind of extreme. And the fact that this is the source or the nest, from which this evil will be born, is a really fucking bizarre concept, and it plays out. I mean, it's not like you don't hide it. I mean, this thing gets bigger, and it's a big fleshy, stuff that Cronenberg would later, explore,
Hmm.
in The Brood and stuff like that. All that stuff is sort of at play here,
Well, that
you
scene
know.
where they're all kind of doing the seance around the table and it starts to come out in the middle of the table where you see
Right.
its face is really a great shot too. Like there's definitely some like Bava-esque lighting, a few points
Yes.
where that green lighting comes up. Like there's some really neat influences in this. The movie looks really cool. And I think the really interesting thing to me is like, I know that yes, you could say that it's a Exorcist ripoff a little bit, but not really. It's its own thing.
No,
Like
no, it's its own
of all
thing.
his movies, this feels like the most of its own thing.
I agree. I mean, it was a novel. It was a novel, right? It was a novel first, and
That's right. I forgot about that.
so
There's
it's
like
an added,
5 sequel novels too, which is crazy. Like
yeah. So
this Graham Masterson wrote a lot of other, other stories of the Manitou. So
that's interesting.
yeah, he wrote Revenge of the Manitou, Burial, Manitou Blood, Blind Panic, Plague of the Manitou, and a short story called Spirit Jump, which is
Fascinating.
Meredith in this too, who his career was kind of like these are the movies he was in at this point too. He was in The Devil's Reign,
Right.
very close to this as well. Like he's until Rocky, like Rocky's kind of like his renaissance of like, oh, I don't have to be in these these movies anymore.
Right. But I do feel like you said, it's its own thing, and I also feel like it's pretty daring because it's sort of like it doesn't, whereas Grizzly is definitely like, it has these very strict sort of genre parameters. This type of movie with this type of creature or monster with the, it's basically, I don't want to say it's boilerplate, but it's a very narrow lane.
Yeah,
And Manitou is like just kind of just goes off in its own. It's literally on its own planet, and it touches all kinds of things, like you said. That the influences are really expressionistic and psychedelic, and they seem to be pulling from all kinds of areas, and sort of like just fearless, and like, because you could have done something much more suggestive. Um, for this ending, it could have been, you could have got Val Lewton to this kind of stuff where it
yeah,
was all played in sort of abstract shadows and light, and it could have been much more artful in that way. And that's what I appreciated about Girdler, even what he did with Grizzly. He's like, no, I'm gonna, even if I don't have all the money I need, I'm reaching for this, like, this scale, and I'm gonna do it whether I really have the resources or not. So in many ways, you'll see these effect shots that certainly by today's standards are cartoonish.
yeah.
But I don't remember in '78 being, again, this is after Star Wars, so I'd seen the state of the art already. I wasn't laughing, when this stuff happens, because it's almost like if the filmmakers believe it that strongly, then I'll roll with it. You know what I mean? Like they're committed to this. They're not making fun of it. They're saying this is happening, so I'm going with it.
That's what I like
I thought it
about
was
like
kind of
when
corny,
people.
but it wasn't totally unbelievable.
Right.
I
I
hate
mean, it's
when
definitely
people say
corny.
it looks fake, and it's like, well, it is.
That's
Like,
okay.
yeah,
I mean, look. I mean, what's so interesting is that, I mean, a lot of people have said this. I mean, the shark in Jaws is painful. Bruce is painfully fake. It's broad daylight. It's clearly not a
Yeah.
real shark. Yet the characterizations and the characters are so strong, and so they are so believable that it doesn't destroy the movie. You forgive it. You actually, you buy in. You choose to buy in. And I'm not saying that the script or the acting in Manitou is of that caliber, but there is something to be said about, like, a filmmaker. I think we were talking about this earlier, not poking fun at what they're doing, but absolutely committing to the reality of the thing, even if they don't have the resources to make it photorealistic or absolutely believable objectively. It's almost like, okay, that's and there's shit in Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, there are certain matte paintings. I mean, look at Marnie. I mean, Marnie has some matte paintings. You're like, like, wow, this is like
Yeah.
painfully artificial that I'm supposed to believe is. So yeah, I think it depends on your own personal taste whether you're willing to, go with it or not. But
and also
it's
when you're born, I think, like you said, if you're an older viewer watching this, you're like, yeah, this is what we accepted that
right.
this would look like when we saw it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I kind of ran into that when I did Monster Island. Even though it was a monster comedy, which was one of the reasons why MTV was, okay with me using stop motion animation, because there was this comedy component, so it wasn't meant to be taken deadly seriously or anything like that by any stretch. But it was funny. The movie really was made for our audience here, and most of the people who saw it at the time were MTV kids. And I got a lot of that. Oh, that looks fake, and it's like, well, stop motion animation isn't supposed to be photorealistic. It's the opposite of that, and it's supposed to be enjoyed because of the certain it's artifice. That's the thing. And so it definitely depends on how you were raised and what movies you saw.
That happens with people watch old Godzilla movies now. Like as a kid, people are like, these movies are cheap and they're guys in suits. I'm like, okay. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I loved them. Like it didn't change that I loved them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it'll be interesting for people who haven't seen the Manitou, what their reaction is, to this, because it is weird in a great way, and again, like with Girdler, it's not like, well, you brought up Manos. Like Manos is genuinely, like, there's genuine incompetence. There's there are filmmakers, or there are people who say they're filmmakers who literally have no understanding of how the medium works and how you put scenes together and stuff, and that's apparent in certain films like Manos and so forth. You never get that in Girdler. I mean, you always get the sense that this is a guy who knows what he's doing. He's a showman like William Castle, or even Roger Corman, but I think he's a better filmmaker than both of them. And it would have been interesting to find out what happened, what kind of films he would have made if he hadn't.
He was 30 when he died, wasn't he?
Yeah, especially coming after this movie, which I feel like is his. Like you said, like this is his like whole cloth making his own movie, and like I would have liked to have seen like what would come after this and where would he take it.
Yeah, because I mean, he started, a lot of filmmakers, even those that became legitimate, certainly started making low budget, genre stuff for Corman, and or other places, and I feel like it would have, he was going somewhere, and I'm not sure where, but it was interesting. It was totally interesting. Certainly the output, he made a lot of films in a very short period of time. I think I mentioned to you, Bill, a couple of times, there's a friend of mine, Ian Cooper, for those people who are interested, the only book, that seems to be out there on William Girdler is a book called Kentucky Wild, which a friend of mine named Ian Cooper wrote. He's a great historian. He wrote I think one of the best just books on cinema ever was his sort of treatise on Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. A whole, and this is like he decides to just go do his biography of Girdler. It's fascinating, but yeah, he's definitely a real filmmaker.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's so funny because my first time discovering Bring the Head of Alfredo Garcia was in the Golden Turkey Awards book, and I read like the Medveds shredding it, and then like when I finally saw it, I was like, this movie is amazing. Like what?
No, that's and for me, obviously, I mean, that movie was like a huge influence, and my own film with Cucaracha, a lot of the atmosphere of that movie comes from Peckinpah, and specifically Garcia. But that's like the definite. Again, Alfredo Garcia is like somebody making like that's an intensely personal movie.
Yeah.
Basically in an exploitation format. That is like a fever dream, and you either get it or you don't. You either get it or you don't.
I just remember reading that book as a kid and being like, they made the movie sound like this, like it is downbeat. I get that, but like just this like joyless like slog through a movie. And when I watched it, I'm like, this is one of the most exciting movies I've ever seen.
No, it's the opposite, really.
Yeah.
It's despite its subject matter, it's actually a very alive. It's a very alive movie. It's the opposite of a downer.
I think the Medved's got some bad weed.
Well, I think the Medveds are very like a lot of times it's just them. Like almost every movie in that book, with the exception of Dondi, which I can say is a bad movie, but like
Yeah.
Zabriskie Point's another one where they like shred and like I'm like I really liked it. Like, do you know
Well,
what I
you,
mean? It's
well, you can't, like going back to the reviews thing, like for
Mhm.
example, when I did this film La Cucaracha, a couple of critics, like Roger Ebert, who happened to be a fan of Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, gave me a very very nice review, and so that was like awesome. And then there was another
Wow.
critic, John Pattison, who wrote for the LA Weekly, that gave a glowing review, and I was like, okay, so like people pretty much like this. I'm glad that'll help me in my career. And then Kevin Thomas of the LA Times wrote a review like I had come over and cut off his grandmother's head. I mean, it was the most. I mean, it was like people literally came up to me and said, "What did you do to Kevin Thomas?" I mean, and it's like it was almost like he couldn't have possibly have seen the same movie or talk about bad weed or bad mood or whatever the fuck. It's almost like
Yeah.
when you see a judge. Like I've seen. I don't know if you ever sit on any trials. I've seen a judge go through the docket, and if he comes, you can tell like if suddenly he's got a bad phone call or something. The way he happens to be treating whatever case is in front of him is completely affected by his mood. Here's somebody's destiny being affected by
Yeah.
and I feel like critics are just, either they don't like, for whatever reason, they're just like, oh, this touches a nerve. I hate it, and they just happen to have the power to tell others this. But yeah, it's you never know why somebody's gonna like love or hate anything.
What is it as a
it's just so
filmmaker?
funny.
That's so much. It's so hard to get a project like that pass through the gate, and then you put it out there and somebody writes something like that about it. Like what does that feel like?
Oh, it's horrible. It's so it's horrible. And again, it's kind of sort of like, but it's your own fault in a way. Like if you're going to take the 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 joy in somebody saying I love your movie, then in a way you're sort of asking for it if you can't take somebody's hating it. But you're
Yeah.
right. It's like it shows a certain like somebody saying I don't like it for these reasons, an illiterate sort of criticism, but an outright, it's almost like what's equivalent to a social media attack where someone's just pouring hate over something, is horrible because you have spent a lot of time and risked a lot, and you put a lot of yourself into something, and then somebody just decides on a whim, like fuck you, I think this
Yeah.
is shit. Um, yeah, it's painful, but uh, it's nothing you can control. It's like that's a big part. I say this all the time. It's like it was no accident that I chose directing because I want a certain measure of control. That I need control. The funny thing is that at every stage in filmmaking, particularly if you work in Hollywood, control is constantly being taken away from you at every step of the way. Whether it's somebody telling you to change your script or cut days out of your schedule or cast this person or change this music or
Yeah.
whatever, or down to the poster and everything else. It's like, so it's a funny thing that you have to reconcile, and reviews are the same thing, or even distribution for that matter. If you make an independent film, like where's it going to turn up, like who's going to release it, or is it going to get released? Those things are things that you can't necessarily control. That's hard for a control freak to accept.
There's a lot of compromises that you're making along the way, and then to have someone that doesn't know this whole story write stuff. I always think about that when I write about movies. I'm like, I'm spending 2 or 3 hours writing about this. This was like a year to 2 years or more of somebody's life,
Mhm.
and multiple lives, like an entire crew and all these things that
Yeah.
happen. And it's like it's a miracle that any movie gets made. Much less, and it's like so. I always feel like that's why I hate. I never think of what I do. Like Bill said, we don't think of like what we do as reviews. It's like we're
Right.
like talking about movies or writing about them versus like straight up review.
That's why I appreciate what you guys do, and also that it's the same spirit of like what was behind the Sinister Cinema documentary was like, maybe these movies, so many of these. I mean, again, like Greg has like 4,000 movies in the catalog, and maybe there are a handful of ones that are like really memorable and watchable all the way through, and most of them are not. But all of them have something that's worthwhile, you know. And to your point, like movies are so difficult to get to work, no matter how much thought is poured into that. If a movie has something, then isn't it better to just talk about that thing that's valuable than to spend all your time just ripping on what it isn't or what,
Yeah.
you know? I think it's very kind, and it's a better approach to just kind of go, you know, this part's actually cool, you
Yeah.
know.
I think about that a lot. Especially, like Girdler is a good example of like we always talk about that. We sometimes like the movies that are ripoffs as much, if not sometimes more, than the movies that they're remake, because it's like to find art within a carbon copy and to find your own story and to do something. It's really interesting, I think, and and like I like seeing like, well, where would, and also it gives you like a weird see, like you talked earlier about the 3 years between Star Wars movies felt like eternity. But then we got stuff like Battle Beyond the Stars and
Right.
um, Star Crash is a good
Yep.
example too.
Yes.
Like where those movies were as exciting to me
Yes.
as Star Wars.
No, Star
And they're,
Crash is still something I think about. You know,
yeah,
I just, you know, again, and Star Crash is another one of those things where it's like you definitely don't have the budget, but there's no shortage of ideas. You know, like the ideas are just pouring out in that thing.
Cozy never
The
even saw
Christmas
Star
lights in
Wars.
space are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas lights in space, right?
He obviously hadn't seen Star Wars, but he had seen Flash Gordon. And
Yeah.
so he was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do a Flash Gordon movie. And
Yeah,
it
no,
works.
yeah, it totally works. Yeah, well, I think that you're right. It's interesting. It's an interesting idea about like what comes out of restriction. You know, like in many ways, you know, what the French discovered in basically in the 60s and started writing about the auteur theory were mostly contract Hollywood directors who worked for the studios in the 30s, 40s, and 50s who really had little choice over the material, but yet their
Yeah.
their signature was on these movies, irrespective of what genre or what they were handed, which I think is an interesting idea that can, and I think it just, unless you're a robot, a director, a filmmaker is going to find a way to insinuate. They have to, in a way, in order to direct anything, you have to kind of get in there
Mm-hmm.
and find your place in it somehow. And
Yeah.
and so even in the stuff like you mentioned, the child, you
Yeah.
know, I, you know, even though that was like a, served up like make this, and to great degree, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus was the same way. It was like I didn't come up with that idea, but when I was asked to do it, I was able to pull in all my childhood love of every Godzilla movie I'd ever seen, you know, like, and I was able to use that in a way that I thought, uh, you know, that becomes an ingredient, you know, whether it transcends its limitations is for somebody else to say, but at least that's what I was bringing to it. It wasn't just like me knocking out a porno, you know, or something like that. It's like, oh, who's to say? Maybe there's personal porn. I would imagine there are certain filmmakers, you know,
I think
poo-poo that, you know,
It's all
but
personal.
like it's like we're pushing a rock up a hill, but like it's trying to find the love in it if
Yes.
you can, and that's a very hard thing to figure out, and like some people never figure it out, but if you can bring something of yourself to it, that's what I love, like you said, especially about the auteur theory of the 40s and 50s contract directors. Like you can tell what movies are theirs, and
Yeah.
like even like you mentioned Val Lewton earlier, the movies that he produced definitely are in his world, and
Mhm.
like, and it's like, and they're very low budget movies and they're for a smaller studio. And like we were talking last week about the sequel to Cat People is
Mhm.
incredible.
Mhm.
Like it's a really great
Yeah.
movie. If it had a different title, people would talk about it as, you know, one of the greatest movies ever. And it's like, that's what I love, that like these things can come out of
Yeah.
commerce. You
Well,
know?
absolutely, and come out of, and I think that's the hopeful thing for also young filmmakers and people who don't have any money to make something, that it's the classic that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention thing. You know,
Mhm.
it is true. There's a certain energy, tension, whatever, that comes out of not having just money to throw at it, that creates all these very interesting choices that make these movies richer, you know, and that have been better than if they had had money to solve them.
Yeah.
Money isn't the best isn't the best fuel for creativity necessarily.
That's why I love low budget movies.
Mhm.
That's the entire reason right there, is because they have a certain aspect that's usually missing anyway. Like, some people obviously know how to spend $300 million, but
Yeah.
most of those movies end up being like big and they're temporarily pleasing, but there's nothing really that you keep with them after that. And whereas these low budget movies, as we've said a couple of times tonight, they stick with you and
Mhm.
you can't get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I find the more inspired creative choices seem to come out of limitations, you know, and then because they're inspired, they're memorable, you know. Um, yeah, it's an interesting thing because every director wants. I've always wanted more days and more time
Mm-hmm.
because I want to, I want to just finesse the thing if I can, and that's what time gives you. But if you don't, then you just have to find another way of, you know, bringing it out. And and the Manitou is one of those things where it's like he could have looked at his budget. He would have known at this point to say, I don't think we can do this finale the way I see it. And it was almost like he was like, fuck it, let's just do it anyway, because the idea is maybe bigger or better than the idea is more important than the execution in some way. Like the concept of the thing is bigger than the execution.
It's
Somehow.
almost like he's like, hey, you know what? This is what I could do. Can you go along with it and just
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah, exactly.
if we had this, like, this is what it would look like.
Right.
And
Watch it
it's
with
good
one
enough.
hand over your
Yeah.
yeah, like do it like this, right? Yeah. So
Can we talk about this bizarre
Oh,
double
good
feature
gravy.
of the Manitou and Rabbit Test?
That I don't understand at all.
oh
That's
my God.
insane. I mean, in a way, it sort of makes sense. It's like here's two crazy movies together. Why not?
Yeah, for Halloween.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
weird. How does that? That's crazy. I guess they couldn't. I mean, Rabbit Test, remember, was weird even for the time when it came out. It was
Yeah.
such a weird.
Yeah.
The fact that it was Joan Rivers and the fact it was just weird.
Oh, I love this tagline so
Me
much.
too. Yeah, and a lot of, like you said before, a lot of black, a lot of
Yeah.
negative space in these ads.
This is like
There's
the
also-
Exorcist angle of the ad
Yes.
campaign.
Yes.
And also this is a big time for reincarnation talk in the late 70s. It was like
Yes.
a hot thing.
Yeah.
Audrey Rose.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love the font for the Manitou too, with the A in it. It's really, oh my God. The late great Planet Earth playing in a drive-in blows my mind, Bill. That's like,
Yeah.
This
and
is a
Animal
big
House and the
idea to
Choir
get used
Boys
to.
is a crazy idea to get used to too.
I
It's
like
like,
Shock and Alice, Sweet Alice.
oh my God.
Scalpel.
Scalpel and Manitou is
Scalpel.
a dream double feature for me. Oh my God. The Warriors are looking for Mr. Goodbar is like, these are two controversial movies that people don't want us to show, and for different reasons. Are people
Yeah.
going to fight or?
Yeah. Cool.
This is from Fort Lauderdale, and
Oh.
I could just look at these ads
Yeah.
for
yeah.
hours and hours.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Damnation Alley and Magic.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
On the show. That's the only movie we've ever showed that people did not like.
What?
Damnation Alley.
Really? That's funny
Yeah.
because about the there was a prop car manufacturer that made movie cars in LA.
Yeah.
Their lot was on Ventura Boulevard, just as you come from Hollywood into the valley, into Studio City. And I used to work in this building. That's where I cut a few of my films. And the Damnation Alley mobile was parked in this lot off of Ventura Boulevard, just sitting there, and it was there for a good 10 years. And it was one of my favorite things, just to be able to drive by and see this huge vehicle. It was just sitting there. And I don't know where it wound up. That place closed and somebody must have bought it. It wound up somewhere.
Well, did you notice the most downer double feature of all those?
Oh wait, which one
Invasion
is
of the
it?
Body Snatchers in the end.
Yes.
Those at the end. Like, that is like very of this time.
Yeah, that's true. That was
Oh.
pretty down.
I remember seeing Invasion of the Body Snatchers on HBO as a kid and being like, I can't believe this is the ending, because I knew the original one so well, and then seeing it, I was like, especially like Mr. Spock is bad, and like all this stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
And then that dog
Yeah.
with the human head, like there's
Yeah.
so much at the end of it. It's just like nightmare fuel.
Brooke
Uh,
Adams turning into a pod was the
Oh,
most heartbreaking thing for
Yeah.
That
me.
was so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much.
Well, that was the case, the Don Siegel version. That obviously he wanted to end it, with "On Your Next," and
Yeah.
Yeah.
they made him shoot that ending. And actually, in retrospect, it you kind of like it helps in a way. Like you said, it's like, okay, all right, so maybe it isn't not all is entirely lost. Not the same for the Philip Kaufman.
No.
Yeah. There's no
I think
hope.
every I don't count the Invaders as much, but of the 3 Body Snatchers films, they're all very much of their era. The Abel Ferrara one's like very 90s and small and dirty, and I like that about it.
I like the Abel Ferrara one.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Ooh, this is an
Look at
interesting
this.
ad. I've never seen this ad.
Yeah.
I've never seen this one. That's fascinating.
It's like a paperback cover with the way the faces come together on the bottom. I love
That's
that.
cool.
Yeah, I'm really into this one. There's
Yeah, I
almost
like
an
that.
inverted crucifix in the bottom with
Yeah.
those images, but
Yeah.
they chickened out and put a couple more in there.
Yeah. Wow.
That's cool.
This says
That's
a lot
cool.
about the movie to me too. Like it's got that like you said, the body horror aspect of it, of him like cutting through her. I really love this ad.
Yeah, it's a good ad. I've never seen that. That's cool.
This is just a little. I like the little ones too,
Yeah.
like the way
Summertime
they
Killers.
the way they fit the logos into these
Mhm.
really small places in the ads. Oh, this was a whole page. Oh, this is from Pittsburgh.
Oh,
Sorry, I can't zoom in on
That's
it.
okay.
I don't think.
message from
space.
yeah. I was just yeah.
Message
Speaking of
from
Star Wars
space.
ripoffs,
Yes.
I know.
with Vic Morrow as Han
Yes.
Solo.
That's right.
Oh man, this is a good double feature.
Phantasm and the
Both these-
Manitou was like it. Yeah, the Avco Embassy
Yeah,
double, I guess.
this is a weed smoking double feature right here.
It sure is. Might even a little acid
Yeah,
wouldn't hurt.
yeah.
It's really strange. Some of these ads, when they scan them, parts are fuzzed
Mhm.
out and you can't see it very
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Starring Tony Curtis.
Yes, that's Make a point of that. Yeah. This is the one I remember. This is the ad that I think I saw as a kid that
Oh,
drew me to it.
yeah.
Susan Strasberg. I honestly believe that even just a little bit of Strasberg is enough to transform you inside forever.
Yes. Yes.
And Stella Stevens too.
Yes, and Celsius.
Oh, Bill, this is my hometown drive-in.
Yes.
Oh,
Here's to you, Sam Panico.
just seeing that logo makes me sad because now it's a racetrack. But man,
It also had a Native American mascot to it.
yes. And it said
I'll just
when you
leave
left,
that
it said "See you before many moons," and it had a totem pole on your way out.
Huh.
Free groceries on Wednesday if you go to the Wednesday show. They'll give you a whole bag of groceries for coming
Wow.
to see Phantasm. We should bring that back. That seems like something we could bring back in this market.
Yeah, for sure.
In beautiful Beaver Falls, next to a nuclear reactor.
Right.
It's very close to a nuclear reactor. Yeah, that's where I grew up. Oh man, this ad is beautiful.
I have to make an Avco Embassy Pictures T-shirt. I don't have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, we're getting a lot of repetition in these ads. Someone really should have edited this.
Did you?
Oh, here we go.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the Manitou is the second hit.
Yeah.
And then you get a Young Frankenstein, which doesn't necessarily doesn't really go, but that's okay.
Anything goes, right?
Yeah,
It was
anything
the
goes, right.
70s.
Right.
Oh.
Oh, okay, wait. There's one more panel to look at. Here we go.
Oh.
A little preview ad for
Hmm.
the Manitou.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Did you find any of the ones that that are talk about Alien, Bill?
No, that's a video ad.
Oh, okay.
Video cover. But we were
Yeah,
talking about body horror. It says in the grisly tradition of Alien.
Mm.
Even though it was made a year before. But you know what? We want you to rent it. So please rent it. Oh, this one, Bill. Look at that Showcase Cinemas logo.
Major studio sneak preview.
Oh man,
this is an important film.
Tony Curtis will be there.
Right.
I like that they called out Super Panvision 70 on the bottom too.
That's right.
That might bring you in.
Oh, that's right. This was like the light show ending would have been really cool in 70
Now that's a weird triple feature. All right, so wait a minute. You got the White Buffalo, which actually does fit into our Native American sort of genre stuff of the period, certainly. But the fact that Peckinpah's Cross of Iron completes it.
I guess would you consider the White Buffalo horror? It's kind of sort of.
Well, I mean, again, it was sort of like that hat trick, Dino De Laurentiis hat trick. It's Kong, Korka, and the White Buffalo. And, I certainly expected the White Buffalo to be like a full-on just monster movie set in the West, and it has a very weird atmosphere. It has a very weird tone to it. Orca too, for that matter. Yeah, I don't know. Like White Buffalo is sort of its own. It's like the Manitou. It's kind of on its own planet.
I like that Bronson has like steampunk goggles on.
Right.
Like
that's
it's
right.
such a strange.
Yeah.
Like it is very. Yeah, it is. That and Orca together would be a cool double feature.
That's definitely a weird. That's a weird monster movie double feature. For sure.
This is just stunning. This is a stunning night out in Louisville again. I'm pretty
Dusk
sure
to Dawn.
Yeah.
I want a foaming cup of vampire venom, if I dare. And that's it. What time's that at? Oh, it's at 1 p.m. What? Okay.
Extra bonus at 1 p.m.
Yeah, I guess I have to stay the whole way through. I gotta wait. Like they're like, you know what? Do you want your? I imagine foaming cup of vampire venom. Someone's gonna pee in it too. I feel like that. That's like they're like, you guys stayed this long. Yeah.
Absolutely suspicious. Okay, we're getting some repeats here. Oh, here's a good one.
Oh, wow. Point of terror.
This is stunning.
Casey's Shadow. With
the Deep.
Yeah, with the Deep.
Jacqueline Bissett in a wet T-shirt.
Yeah. Casey Shadow and the Deep is definitely, they don't go together.
Is Tales of Bizarre the Mummy movie?
The Mummy movie.
That's like 8 years after this came out, or 7 years after that came out.
And Tower of Evil is Horror of Snape Island.
Yeah.
Before they renamed it Beyond the Fog.
And Simon King of the Witches would be about 6 years old here too. That is, oh my God, that's awesome. I did finally watch the director of Bizarre's other movie, Horror Hospital, this week, Bill, and I loved it, as you can imagine.
You were texting me about it. Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Like it was literally like 15 minutes in it, and it was like hippies in a hospital, and all the bad guys had motorcycle helmets, and I was like, God, this movie's great. This ad though.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen this.
Yeah.
That's
a UK
From the
one.
UK run. Yeah.
Spirit of Evil.
Yeah.
All over London from May 13th.
I like the hands holding the logo too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Through the fire, yeah.
As advertised on radio and TV.
Mm-hmm. Neat.
Wow.
Okay.
Very cool.
So let's do a commercial break in the drink segment. How about that, huh?
Let's do it. Huh?
Okay. How about that drink segment, huh?
Huh?
Years ago, they drove it into the swamps. Legend says it's still there. Legend of the Bayou. Nowadays, most folks swear it never happened. A few have even bet their lives on it. Legend of the Bayou. Pray it isn't true. Legend of the Bayou. Rated R. No one under 17 admitted without parent.
Starts Friday at the Aurora Cinema.
Don't you just hate the holidays? A couple of weeks of partying and you feel like a real blimp. Even your ankles got fat. It's enough to make you want to give up. But that's when you gotta get tough. Get.
Join Join Jack LaLanne now while you can still get 1985 rates.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
We will return after these messages.
We don't know anything for a fact.
Clint Walker.
Except that bulldozer kills.
Carl Betts. 2 men dead. The survivors watch an unmanned bulldozer continue its rampage. Killdozer.
Now that my Melissa's drinking more, she needs something that will really help keep her dry. And when it comes to dry, I use nothing but Johnson's disposable diapers. The diaper with pulling action. Johnson's has 2 layers of padding. Special pulling action absorbs irritating wetness into the bottom layer, away from baby's tender skin. Let the diaper with pulling action help keep your baby nice and dry. Only from Johnson & Johnson.
What can we say about our second movie? The Ms. Quamacus is the drink for it.
What does that mean?
It's the name of the Native American entity that comes out of a girl's shoulder. That Tony Curtis has to stop it. Can he? Can modern medicine and a medicine man stop Ms. Quamacus? Probably saying it wrong. Definitely saying it wrong. All I know is how to make drinks. Here's what we got. This one's got 4 ounces of watermelon juice. Almost going bad, but it's still got a couple days, so I'm going to drink it. We got the Espolón tequila. We got the, how much we got of that? 1.5 ounces. Half an ounce triple sec. Half an ounce lime juice. Should we have used a bear honey for the grizzly drink? Yeah, probably would have worked better. But we're going to use it in this drink. Here we go. Let's put it all in to a shaker. And then you're going to do the lime at the end. Not the lime, the honey. Thank you, baby. Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
Honey baby, thank you.
Honey bear.
Sweetie darling, thank you. Honey bear, that's where you take your pepper and do it in the parking lot. There we go.
People around us probably think your name is really baby, because I never call you Sam.
That's what my name is in your phone.
I just say baby.
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 Baby. Baby.
Just like a mother, you know, if you're in trouble.
Strangers in the
Let me say
night, making bear drinks, hold each other tight. Look at that. Looks like we're going to Starbucks twice.
Maybe you could get a third job there.
Good.
A barista.
Yeah. What are your 3 jobs? Writer,
Well, you can
and
drink
hand.
that.
What?
You can drink that.
Yeah. Pazuzu. Let's see what this is all about. As we go deep into the 70s. It's wonderful. This is great. I would recommend this drink. I wish I'd made it for the drive-in, but I made it now, so that's it. You ruined it. You had something great, and you ruined it. Anyways, this is a great drink. I'm very much looking forward to watching this movie. I'll talk to y'all in a bit. Pazuzu.
That looks tasty.
Thank you. That was an impression of my mom. Nobody else gets it. That's something my mom would say to me as a kid. Like, you had something wonderful, and you've ruined it. And I'm like, what? Who says that to a kid? But yeah, still does.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So my brother and I say it all the time to each other. He'll call me and be like, you had something great and you fucking crucified it. And I was like, what? I'm like, oh, hi, Mom. Anyways. Yeah, you can buy Simply Watermelon now at the grocery store. It's like a mixture of watermelon and cherry juice. It's very refreshing.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Yeah, so it's good. I've been experimenting with watermelon-themed drinks this season.
That's cool. Well, with the summer coming, it's perfect.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah. I got to finish my drinks for the drive.
I was taken by surprise when I saw you had watermelon juice in one of the beverages tonight.
Yeah.
So I was kicking myself for not setting up for it. I'm sorry.
That's
I should have
okay.
been on brand.
I only have a name of one of my drinks for the drive-in, and I have to figure out what it is. But Fruity Kruger is going to be one of my drinks, which I think is a pretty good one.
Yeah, that has to be.
Yeah. So it's like that's part of the problem is coming up with a name, and the other was Nightmare on Margarita Street. The other one, yeah. So, will I do a basket case? Probably Basket Case 2 seems like the right movie to do a drink about, and then probably Frankenhooker, base drink. Right. So thinking about it. We'll get there. It's all in the planning. But
All right, cool.
What always happens too is when people come to the drive-in too, and they have one of these drinks, they go, "Wow, I didn't realize how strong these were." And I said, if you watched me make them on the show, like my wife said, "There's a lot of tequila in this drink," and I said,
Right.
"Not really. I don't know. It seems normal to me." So yeah, but when you're out, it's cold at the drive-in in April. You got to have a little bit of some liquid courage in you.
For sure.
Yeah, I love this lady floating scene. By
Yes,
the way,
as a kid, this is the most, for me, was the most disturbing thing. I mean, obviously, I didn't know what was coming, but as the movie rolls along, when this old woman suddenly starts screaming "Pana" and floating down a hallway, that was nasty. And this the bit in the operating room where the surgeon, anybody turning a scalpel on themselves is pretty messed up.
Yeah. The
I'm not
entity
sure
isn't
if it
a
was
good
on
one to
purpose,
watch
but
with this.
in Mausoleum,
Mm.
there's a recreation of that floating old woman where the aunt gets floated out over the big staircase drop, and something happens to her. She gets ripped open. Bobby Breezy, demonically possessed breasts. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I know we talk about Mausoleum a lot, Bill, but it's worth talking
I
about.
know. I had to go bring it up. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying it's.
I want to.
You did it because you want to.
Look at Michael Ansara, Native American, like Armand Arsante in Prophecy, and Victoria Racino. Neither one of them Native American.
No.
Well, almost every Native American in wrestling wasn't Native American either. Like Chief Jay Strongbow was Joe Scarpa, is his real name, an Italian. So, if you're Italian, there's a good chance you could be a Native American wrestler or actor. So it worked out. Michael Arcero is Arabic, Syrian American. So that let him really get whatever he wanted to be in. He was, again, ethically ambiguous, I should say.
Ambitious.
Ambitious. And he was Cochise on Broken Arrow, so that probably typecasted him, because that was one of his first big roles. He's also, Bill, you always say whenever I bring up somebody to my mom, I'm like, Michael Ansara, she goes, "Oh, he didn't treat Barbara Eden well." Like, okay, I just want to know about his acting. I don't need to know the Inquirer story.
We have to get personal about it.
Yeah, let's get personal. Yeah.
So
We
I know
should
there's
make
some new people
Dr.
in the
Pimple,
chat, but let's talk some more. Oh,
Dr.
sorry.
Pimple Popper. I just said we should do a Dr. Pimple Popper of the Manitou, like cross over those shows when it comes out of her shoulder. But I'm excited to hear more about this film.
So this is a project that Jack Perez has coming out at some point in the near future, hopefully. Sinister Cinema is going to be selling it. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, Sinister Cinema, and then is going to do the Blu-ray. It's I screened it recently for an audience up here in Portland. There's one of the last great video stores is up here called Movie Madness. I don't know if you know about Movie Madness. It's a terrific video store, and they have an incredible collection of memorabilia, like stuff that was never in LA. Like just amazing props and wardrobe, just the greatest stuff. And what was my point? So I had a screening there just about a week ago, and it went really well. Everybody was really into it. I was very happy because most people had never even heard of Sinister Cinema, and it was real education for them to know that these movies, had been curated by this one guy for basically 4 decades, and that these movies exist. And somebody in the audience said, "It sounds like this piece is semi-autobiographical," was their comment. And I thought that was an interesting comment. And I guess it's autobiographical, I guess, in the sense that I don't know, I feel a certain kinship with low-budget genre movies, mostly because that's the world I worked in professionally most of my life, and also the source of why I got into the movie business in the first place was the love of those movies. So it's all sort of woven together. And like I said earlier, I just feel like um, I have great empathy for filmmakers, particularly just in general, particularly those that are not recognized or remembered, anymore. I mean, very seriously doubt if we weren't like pushing the Manitou or Grizzly, anybody would know or care about William Girdler. It just as one
Yeah.
example. So I think it's important to kind of point these people out in their films to people to say, hey, and I think most people like get excited when they see. I mean, that's what I'm seeing is like when people see these things, they're like, "Wow, I want to investigate this." It's what we were talking about earlier about this idea of like exploring and discovering, and maybe that's uncommon, these days. That this feeling of discovery. And truthfully, what's really cool is in the process of doing the documentary, because there were so many titles, I still keep uncovering stuff that I haven't seen. As long as I've been wading
Yeah.
through movies, and really the cutting was really the heavy lifting. It was really just going through these titles and trying to surgically remove
Oh,
sort of the best
it was
bits.
amazing. Your
Yeah.
work on this piece is incredible.
Oh,
Just looking at all of the editing that you did for this, it had to have been a monumental undertaking.
it was. I appreciate that, Bill. And for me, it was, like, how do I even begin to kind of like just go through these titles and find, what's worth presenting, and find some cohesion in putting all this stuff together. But I mean, what's fortunately, it was. I kind of approached the interview with Greg, talking about how the catalog, in a way that the catalog is laid out, which is really by genre. So if you look at the catalog, there's definitely a horror section, a fantasy section, sci-fi, and then you get sword and sandal, and you get exploitation and crime thriller, and on and on and on and on. And so I was able to kind of like sort of drill down on genres and try to find the best representative films as I could. But like I said, like just the other day, I came across a title, and I was like, "Holy cow! You have this in the arsenal too." And so it's weird. It's like I think he's got more films than he even knows he has in a way. What I do miss though is the actual tangible catalog, because the catalog used to be,
Yeah.
this, and he was hand paginating, and he was doing just like you were talking about the old days of just laying these things out. And at a certain point, it just got too much for him, and he sort of poured it over to a website. And it's essential to have the website because you can find the stuff and order the stuff, but it doesn't have the same magic as the actual. And you can go on eBay now that people are selling old Sinister Cinema catalogs, like just to have the catalog,
I've
the
got
old
one
catalog.
somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just fundamentally it's just the love of movies, and specifically these types of movies that we've been talking about. That really is the sort of the core of the thing. So um,
I couldn't imagine
and
anybody hunting down Hallmark films like this.
right,
Like I have to see
right.
Yeah.
every Hallmark film that there is.
Yeah, well, somebody will. It's like funny when I was working, when I was first working in the business. I worked at a production company doing these behind-the-scenes documentaries, and they were also very big in the clip show, network television show business, in the sense that they would do these retrospectives on classic series. So they did like new Bob Newhart show and Mary Tyler Moore, and but they also did Bonanza, and they did a show called Back to Bonanza. And in order to do these shows, these editors had to watch every frickin' episode of Bonanza. And that's not necessarily, I don't care how hardcore fan, that's not anything. We were looking at these guys, like these poor guys, like they were, like it was some sort of weird psychological experiment. Like if you lock two guys in a room and make them watch every episode of Bonanza, what happens to you, you know? So,
Now I want to know.
but this was actually a joy because, to explore the titles in the Sinister Cinema catalog is no great hardship. It's just like
Yeah.
you're always uncovering something cool.
I just the 2 seconds I just looked at the site, I was like, oh yeah, there's like at least 4 movies I could be like, these are really important to me. So yeah,
Right.
like it's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like I said, I kind of just sort of I've skimmed the surface, and I feel like if there's interest and I can do more and talk to like you guys and people in our community about the titles that they love. I think that's another way of just kind of keeping the catalog alive in this world, very specific world of genre movies, low budget genre movies alive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that, like, for example, his customers are really like our age or even older, and that speaks to why he doesn't even do Blu-rays necessarily. That DVD is like the height of the technology, like that's he says, and in the documentary, as you saw it, like he has people who are still like, they're still watching exclusively the stuff on VHS. Like that's as far as they want to take it.
I
Um,
talked about this story before on the show. Like, there's a big used store here called the Exchange. It has like tons of old media, and I was in the horror section, and there was this guy that was about 80, and he said, "Oh, my wife died." He just started talking to me. He said, "My wife died about a year ago, and I decided to buy a DVD player. I never had one before." And he goes, "I didn't know that all these movies my wife and I watched on show or theater I can buy now." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Did they have any Barbara Steele movies?" I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy's my best friend, new best friend." So I helped him like go through and find what Barbara. He goes, and he was like, "Nightmare Castle. Oh, my wife and I love this movie." And I was like, "Man, first off, your wife was awesome. I never met her, but that's amazing." And he's like, so I found like 5 Barbara Steele movies for him. And he's
Right
like,
on.
"I can watch these all the time." And I was like, "Wow, that's pretty awesome." That like he's very late to the DVD game, but you know what? Who cares?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
he probably went home and enjoyed those. So it made me
totally.
super happy. Yeah,
That's cool. That's very cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, it was just like, I feel like the Sinister Cinema thing was really just a personal project that,
Mm-hmm.
and just as a filmmaker, I feel like just the way I've been formed is that I have to do a personal project, something more personal to kind of keep me going. I mean, I love any opportunity to make anything, but like the movies that I look back on that I really care about tend to be the ones that are more personal,
Mm-hmm.
and so this was an opportunity just to do something, something personal, which is not unlike what you guys are doing right now. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just like it just dove into something that I loved, and just did
That
it
must
for
be
that.
an interesting thing as a creative to engage with somebody else's material and somehow make it your own. That's interesting. Every film, almost every film anyway, is a collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
and it's but it's an important thing for a director to be able to do that, to find an end to whatever they're making this movie about. You
Oh,
can kind of
totally.
tell when they don't.
Yeah. And again, it's like, I by no means am representing the totality of anything. I'm putting forward, like as you said, Bill. I'm like basically the stuff I'm responding to is the stuff I'm putting forward, and somebody else might, say, no, you missed this one. This is definitely worth investigating. And I think that's definitely true when you're sort of presenting your interpretation of a big subject. Um, you know, so I really try to do is just try to, and I let Greg, in many ways, Greg Luce, the founder, just kind of lead the way and have him tell me, you know, like these are the ones that in my own collection, these are the ones that sort of, speak to me. And in a way, that was sort of the way in to the, I could see the key ones to sort of show. But I'm sure there are plenty of titles that deserve representation that aren't in this cut, that we could probably, do later. That's exciting. I mean, I really do think it goes back to
One of the
when you
most
get to a
amazing.
certain age. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. You can finish your thought.
Oh no. I don't even know what I was saying. I think now I totally forgot.
I
No,
was
but go ahead.
surprised
Go ahead.
in the documentary when I watched the documentary where he talked about going to other cities to watch things that were on TV,
Right.
and it's something I could totally relate to because that was one of the key elements of my week as a child was that when the new TV guide came out, and then I could look and see what was playing
Right.
and plan my TV watching for the week. So the idea of branching out and going into another city where they like renting a hotel room just to
I know
watch
it's crazy,
TV,
right?
it's
That.
just
Yeah.
staggering.
Yeah, it is. It really does speak to that sort of like that enthusiasm, which we do understand. By the way, speaking of that, a lot of people are fans of Fade to Black, And I'm an actually big fan of the novelization of Fade to Black. I don't know if you've ever read that, but I actually think it's in many ways, a richer story, the way the story is told. And the whole opening of the book, the tie-in or the novelization of Fade to Black, is exactly his step-by-step procedure of pouring through the TV guide and organizing his calendar and what he's going to watch and what he's going to tape and why. And
Yes.
you really get into that, the minutia and the importance of like building a calendar. And I've got to be home in time to tape that. And or he's going to have his, whatever, his aunt make sure that she sets the timer so this gets recorded. And it's just it really does speak to that very specific time period where you were trying to catch this stuff, as it came out, as opposed to, today where
Yeah,
you
you
find
had
anything.
to.
Yeah.
This was before VHS, before you
Yeah.
could record anything, and you had to be home. You had to be in front of your television when this screened, and otherwise, you were going to have to wait another year at least, probably a couple of years before they would ever show it again, if they ever did.
Yeah. It was like the
So there
radio.
was a real.
Yeah, it was like
It
a
was
song on the
scary
radio.
almost.
Yeah, it was like a song comes on, and you never know when it's going to come on again. And
No adult in my life could relate to this, and eventually they caught on to the fact that I was trying to manipulate the television for the week, and I'm like, they didn't understand how important that was for us to see this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's just some stupid movie he wants to watch.
Right, right.
Meanwhile, like the Greg Luces of the world were going to other cities to record them
That's
on
right. That's
a
that's
video.
absolutely that's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's why the whole, ownership or tangibility of owning of a film, on VHS, actually holding that thing in your hand meant so much, because it was this, it was this thing that, it was this intangible that you couldn't have, like, but now suddenly you could have it and possess it was almost unimaginable,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting now that it's come back around, that there is this sort of, renewed, reverence for the actual, tangible, physical media thing,
I
which is great.
remember too being able to seeing those Super 8 reels at
Yes,
Kmart. There was like a display of movies.
that's
I'm
right.
like,
They
I
were
can
usually on.
take this movie home and own it.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
my
yes, yeah.
God.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And he speaks to that in the doc, right? So it's like, yeah, all those things about, and it was like incremental, right? It was like, before that it was soundtracks. You could get a soundtrack
Yes.
and listen to the soundtrack, and I vividly remember, like, with an audio cassette recorder, taping movies, just putting it in
Yes.
front of the speaker, just so you could, relive it, whether it's through the soundtrack, whether it's through an audio recording of the thing, staring at the, at the artwork. You were trying to just relive and own that moment again. And it was only until, VHS, this thing was this. Oh, right before that, again, these Super 8 cut downs, where it's just like, it was bits of it, you know. It graduated to this, like, suddenly you can be in a box and you'll have it. And I don't think people can really, kids, I don't know if they can appreciate that, because it's like, it's always been, you're born into it. That's the way it was, like, of course there are movies that you can have, why wouldn't you have them? So it's an interesting, psychological.
And they're not going to have the weight that we did, even from, like, it always seemed like, oh, well, I'm sure your parents did that. Well, we'll watch that when it comes on cable, or you can watch that when it comes out to rent. And it's like, that window is 2 weeks now, if that, do you know what I mean? And that's so crazy to me today, that, like, you can just get stuff so quickly now.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it has the same, it doesn't have the same specialness necessarily, if it's that readily available and it's that easy to get, then I'm not saying you should make things hard to get, but it's funny how things that are hard to get somehow become, special in your mind. It's just like, okay, this rare thing, it's a rare thing, it's a rare thing. So it has value. It's strange. But Vince wrote, I have a cassette taping of the opening theme. Yeah, the Bernard Herrmann 7 Fortunes of Sinbad. That's awesome. Taped over a drive-in speaker. Yeah, that's exactly the mindset,
Somewhere on YouTube, there's a clip that somebody posted of they took a cassette recorder into a screening of Halloween in 1979, and they wanted to record the music, but what they got was the audience screaming at a couple of the big shock moments.
cool.
And it's on there like with the actual film image, and it's scored at exactly the same time as the screams happen in the theater. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
only
yeah.
maybe like 3 minutes, and I wish it was the whole 90 minutes. It's just
That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
I can remember doing that when it was on NBC the first time in
Mm-hmm.
1981, and I was at home with a babysitter, and we watched Halloween, and I recorded it, and I would, like, whenever I knew it was going to be scary, I would try and scare her so she would scream for the recording.
That's awesome.
For years, that was what I listened to over and over again, was just that TV recording of Halloween.
Right. That's great.
The roots of my obsession, and everybody else's too.
Right, for sure.
Jack Perez, director of the upcoming The Sinister Cinema Story and so many other strange tales. It's been so exciting having you on the program tonight.
That's my pleasure.
Are you gonna go all the way to the third segment?
I can't. I actually have family in town, so I promised to participate. It's 10 o'clock here, so I have to do my familial duties. But I would definitely please have me back if I'm not imposing. I'd love.
No, we'd love to have you back.
I'd love to come back some other time. And I hope everybody enjoys both movies. Enjoyed Grizzly, and definitely the Manitou is something special. So. Thank you so much for having me for this. I loved it.
Thanks for joining
Thank you.
us.
And
it's been a lot of fun.
Right on. Well, you guys have a great rest of the show, and I'll see you in the future, hopefully.
Awesome.
We hope everybody will come back after the Manitou. The link is on Groovy Doom. Go watch it. Come back afterwards for the third segment, and we'll have lots more to talk about. Until then, witchy Manitou, or whatever they say in this film. Bye-bye.
See you.